Okay, I think I am live. Go ahead and let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. Looks a little blurry too. Okay. I'm supposed to have it up here. It's not live yet. I guess there's like a delay. Is this the right link? Okay, there I am playing with my phone. Okay, it looks like it just went live. Seems to be a very long delay here. Okay, I want to be able to see the chat when I move over. Live chat. All right, guys. Happy full moon, everybody. This one's exciting. This one is super exciting. Hi, Heather. I'm just giving it a second for people to hop in. I'm waiting for my dog to settle down. Can you lay down, please? Lay down. Lay down. I'm gonna heat her. Okay. This one's gonna be really long, you guys. I have been taken on a trip. If you have been following me for a while, you know the theory that I'm going to lay forth tonight has been developing since the beginning. It's been developing since the very beginning. Little bit by little bit by little bit, it's made more and more sense. And this one in particular has really been unfolding over the past 6 months. And a lot of the research was done a long time ago, and I didn't really realize how much I had until I went to kind of compile it all together. So I'm going to start laying out my Patreon. I have a plan, okay? So I have a lot of things I want to do. Now that my YouTube is monetized, I would like to make more than $3, which is how much I've made so far. And so I needed to post more videos, but I do not want to edit and do all of the crazy things that you have to do. And honestly, I have a lot of content already over on Patreon. They're tied to moons that no longer apply, but if you guys have been with me, and many of you have been with me since the beginning, you know every video had its own rabbit hole attached to it. I also want to be compiling all of this into a book, but it's scattered all over and I need to start pulling it together. And so I need to go back through and watch all these old videos and create PDFs and timestamp things and start to compile this giant puzzle together. And so this is my plan. I'm going to start releasing old Patreon, old moon videos that were on Patreon on YouTube with timestamps for all of the subjects. And then I'm going to make PDFs for all of the research that I was doing on all those moons and simultaneously grow my YouTube while compiling the information I need for my book. And somehow everything's going to get done. I'm not really sure how, but this is my new plan. So, hi, Millie. So, these videos are going to start coming with pretty dense research. I don't really know. You guys know, I don't have a plan here. I wasn't trying to become an astrologer. This all just happens. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just keep following it. And I know I'm not supposed to be just doing regular astrology. I'm supposed to be following whatever this is that I'm following. And I know this is eventually going to turn into a book. And so I'm going to do that. And that's kind of what Patreon is going to be. It's going to be me compiling all of this stuff and you guys kind of along for the ride. So if you're into all my deep dives and all my crazy research, like you're going to be able to dive into it with me because you're going to have like an accompanying PDF. I am not promising that everything written on that PDF is going to make sense to you. It doesn't even often make sense to me. I was going to take pictures of this one page of notes that I did the other night. I was like, I'm going to write this down. And then tomorrow I'm going to make a graphic and it's going to make so much sense. And then the next day I was like, what does this say? So sometimes I'm going to have moments of brilliance that are really only fleeting moments of brilliance and later don't make sense. But I'm going to really work on trying to compile everything together. So we're going to dive in. This is a Gemini moon. Expect it to be very mercurial, very Gemini, all over the place, information dense, but like a little bit of information all over, no real rhyme or reason to it, and kind of very scattered, like a good Gemini always is. Can we? Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen because it's going to be easier than trying to use any sort of like slides or anything. I do have the chat in front of me over here. So I should be able to see you guys. Hi, everybody. Okay, yeah, we have some new members. Okay, Allie, hello. Can you do the basics here before you fly off the deep end? Okay, we have some new members. For those of you who are new and are like, whoa, what's happening here? You're going to need a couple of things with you. Linked below the post on Patreon is the apprentice cheat sheet. It's an apprentice cheat sheet. It has like a little bit of all of astrology's language, and it'll help you to kind of understand your chart. Print that out, keep it with you. It's really great. It really helped me learn a lot. I used it a lot when I was learning in the beginning. You want to have your natal chart on the post on Patreon. There's also a couple of resources where you can get that, and a pen and notes. And if I forgot anything, could you guys write it in the chat because I know the rest of you already know this. Okay. So we're going to go over here. We're going to go to the slides. Okay, so you guys know that I always like to try to encode as much as I can into the thumbnail. I wish I knew where this graphic came from, this one over here. I saw this, somebody made a meme with this picture like 2 days ago, and I was like, what the fuck is this? It's literally a depiction of what I am going to try to explain to you here tonight. This pole star, here's the pole star, galactic clock aligned with the galactic center, and ultimately us as a fractal of this same sort of cosmic soul. And I was like, where did this come from? And of course I messaged the person and they didn't reply, but I have no idea. I also spent far too much time the other day Googling, trying to Google. I'm going to move myself really quick so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So hold on. Okay. Yeah, I have no idea where this graphic came from. If anybody knows, please let me know. The person's face, it looks like it probably came from one of those Pleiadian books, whether it's Barbara Hand Clow or that Kawan, that other woman who like learned underneath her and also wrote a couple of books. It looks like some of her imagery, so maybe it came from her. I don't know. I'm using it because it's perfect for depicting what it is I'm trying to talk about here tonight. And we'll get into it as we get into it. But we're going to be getting really esoteric here tonight. And it's going to be a culmination of things we've been discussing for some time. So a lot of what we're talking about here, I've already floated at you guys. If you have been a member of the Alliance for a while. So, up at the top, it says we're going past the Pillars of Hercules. The Pillars of Hercules is used a lot when discussing Atlantis and like the position of Atlantis on the earth. Like, it's past the Pillars of Hercules. And nowadays they claim that that's the Straits of Gibraltar, but really that's a more modern interpretation. All we really have to go off is Plato's Pillars of Hercules. And we're going to talk here tonight, and we have before, about how Hercules, the legend of Hercules, I want to put my face back, but I want to finish this slide first. The legend of Hercules and the pillars in general, the 12 labors of Hercules, is an allegory for the zodiac. We're going to talk here tonight about how pretty much everything is. This is something that I've always said and I always believe, and I believe that's why I can find all these random things in the sky, is because it really has, it holds it all. It holds it all. And all of these legends and myths are ultimately discussing celestial movements. Everything from the Bible to pick a pantheon, it doesn't matter. It's talking about the zodiac, the stars, the luminaries, the celestial bodies moving through the heavens. And Atlantis, I believe, is no different. So if you followed me for a while, I am obsessed with Atlantis. Like, to the point where it's probably slightly unhealthy. I'm going to put my face back here. You guys have seen this picture enough. What am I doing? Why am I zoning out? I should have taken a bong rip before I put my face back, though. Yeah, you guys are going to have to wait a second. Apparently you're not supposed to smoke weed or curse on YouTube if you want to be monetized. I think I can do the first one, but the second one is just really not possible. Okay, so if you guys know, I've been obsessed with Atlantis for a very long time. I don't even know how many books I own on Atlantis. I have watched every single thing that you can find on any streaming, YouTube, DuckDuckGo, anywhere that you can find videos or documentaries or movies, no matter how old, on Atlantis. I have watched them. And books, there's a lot. It's a lot. And if you followed me, you know that I have been planning for a very long time to write a book on Atlantis. All of the bits and pieces of Atlantis, the archaeology and, the timeline and the cataclysm and all the evidence for that and all the evidence for everything. And it's funny because I have Atlantis conjunct my sun and my south node, because my sun and my south node are conjunct in my chart. And your south node is your past incarnation. Oh yeah, I'm smoking sage. I like that. I'm just gonna smoke a little bit of sage really quick over here out of this water pipe. Okay. So Atlantis, what was I saying? I was obsessed with Atlantis. It's conjunct my south node. Your south node is your past incarnation. It's everything you bring from there, and also where you can get stuck. But it holds all the wisdom that you have obtained. And I had some sort of realization where I realized, I already know a lot of this stuff, and I could spend forever trying to catalog all of these different facts and debunk things and do whatever. And it's just not what I'm supposed to be doing. My north node is in the 8th house of the mysteries, of the occult, of astrology. And it sits opposite that Atlantis south node, which holds the wisdom to feed my north node mission. And so I was like, I need to lean more into the esoteric. And that's when I realized, and I started to look at particularly Plato's Atlantis, which is where it started, ultimately, that word. And much of it starts with Plato, but ancient lost civilizations obviously are numerable and span across all cultures. But the term Atlantis originates with Plato. And it's when you read it through less of an exoteric lens, like, okay, where is this island in the middle of the Atlantic? And you start to look at it more with an esoteric lens, you start to see that it's probably talking about the stars. It's probably talking about our evolution as a soul and how we are mirrors of the stars and us, and how we fell from this and forgot this, and this is what we're ultimately working towards. The pillars of Hercules being the pillars of the zodiac. Hercules has his 12 labors where he travels to 12 signs and has 12 quests he has to fulfill in order to pass these ultimate pillars of consciousness, of duality, to something else, which we're going to talk about here through a multitude of names. Some cultures know it as Mount Meru, some know it as Shambhala, some know it just as this like northern star, the axis Mundi. Many cultures look at this a different way, but it's this concept of the center of the whole. And this like greater consciousness. And we're going to talk about how, we've talked heavily in astrology. We talk about all the different archetypes, right? We have solar consciousness and lunar consciousness, and we have, Venusian type energy, Saturnian type energy, mercurial, more mental energy. And then there's this concept of this like pole star energy that's connected more to it all. And we've talked a lot about the anima mundi, which is this concept of the world soul. But we're going to be talking tonight about the axis mundi, which is like the focal point for this world soul, and how it is manifested in the sky, on our planet, and then within us as well. And we have touched on some of these subjects before, and I did link some of the videos to the monthly videos, so maybe you guys watched that, but definitely the Atlantis video, we touched on some of this. The Cancer new moon video, we touched on this as well. And this concept of the gate of man and the gate of the gods, I have been expanding on I honestly don't even know how I came across this. It was like in the beginning when I first started diving into star systems and Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus or however you want to say that dude's name, and Orion, and that opposition between Orion, Gemini, that split, that human energy of duality, and the galactic center, in Sagittarius, and this being this like gate of man, gate of the gods. I don't remember where I heard this from, but I remember not being able to find it again, but I remember it really making so much sense to me that that's how I really understood this axis in astrology, and I dove into it with my starseed readings. And then I started finding it in all these old esoteric texts, and we're going to be diving into some of those here tonight. I'm just going to get going because I have like so much to say here tonight. I'm probably going to keep you guys captive for a really long time. Feel free to come back whenever. I just literally have to get this out of me. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. But this is not only a full moon, a Gemini full moon. This is an eclipse culmination. So this is the partner full moon for the Gemini solar eclipse that we had 6 months ago, which was actually when I was doing much of this research without even really knowing where it fell in the sky yet. You guys, the way this all unfolded is just so strange. It's so strange. Okay. And like I've said a million times, it's aligned with the pole star in the galactic center. This is the energy of the mutable mind, the shifting, mutable, evolving mind, and a funneling in of information right now. This is a huge illumination. Gemini is the sign of information of all kinds, from everywhere, a little bit from every single where, so that it can understand all sides of it. Eddie is a Gemini. I love that man so much, but he can always see the other side of fucking everything. And he always plays like devil's advocate, even when he does not believe the thing that he is arguing the point against. They can see it from all angles. And it's because they are very eclectic in their information gathering that they can kind of put themselves in a little bit of everybody's shoes. But like usually only one at a time. They have a hard time being on both sides at the same time, but they can do it. And it's ultimately what they're working towards to unlock this gate that we're going to be talking about here tonight. And we all are working towards that in the house that Gemini governs in our chart. So we're going to be talking a lot about the opening of the gates. The Arthurian archetypes, I was planning on covering heavily tonight, but they just kind of led me to where I was going, just like their quest. I'm going to pull the chart and show you how they are literally everywhere right now. We are going to talk about the sword and the stone a little bit, but for the most part, it's just rad they're here. And then this concept of the labyrinth, the axis mundi, the center of it all, the spiral, and us, ultimately. God, I want to know where this picture's from. Can somebody please? Oh, you tech savvy people. There is a way. I don't know. I only know this from, I don't know how I know this. There is a way to, Sharon, I think you've done this for me before, to like take an image and then search it through Google for like its origin. I think that's a thing you can do. If anybody is bored while I'm talking, feel free to search that. Okay, so before we go full blown off, I do want to talk about some normal astrology. So let's find this axis in our chart. This is the axis that has been a focus during this entire eclipse story, this past 18 months, Gemini, Sagittarius eclipse cycle. Many of you, I have done readings with several of you, you have your nodes here. This is huge for you. If you have any sort of North Node, South Node action, these eclipses were your eclipses. It's where the eclipses were the year you were born, when you incarnated, and it's like your personal fated energy. Eclipses always bring change, but like the ones that fall on your nodes bring the change, your change. While other people will have their change during their nodes. This one's more for you. Also, if you have planets there, particularly some stelliums with some stronger personal planets or some like big boys, you're feeling it. So let's look and see where this axis is in our chart. Whenever we have a full moon, we have one of the 6 axis of polarities highlighted. So I always make this clear because when I learned this, I started to look at astrology completely differently. And so I make sure to say it a lot. So get used to it. I say that we do not have 12 independent signs of the zodiac that just sit independent from each other. We have a 6 axis of polarities. Whether we have planets there or not, you have 6 axis of polarities in your chart that govern parts of your life that are seeking harmony, balance, and unification. That's our job as humans, to somehow find that balanced center in between that ultimately this moon is really there to show us. And right now, the axis that is a focus is the Gemini and Sagittarius axis. So look and see what houses those fall in your chart. Feel free to write them in the chat. You'll have one house from this side and one house from this side. And these ultimately are like 2 sides of the same coin. So, yeah, there are things that we're ultimately seeking balance. The first house and the 7th house, this is where we find balance between us and others. The 2nd house and the 8th house is where we like hold on and where we transform. The 3rd house and the 9th house are both mental houses. They're both the mind, but they process information differently, but definitely work hand in hand. This is our home life and our career life and trying to find that balance in between. It's also the house of the mother and the father, as well as a plethora of other things. Our personal self-expression and the like greater good of all. And then this is the axis of service, particularly. Melly says she has Jupiter at 26 degrees and her fortune at 27. Yeah, so this moon His moon trine falls exactly, like literally exactly, conjunct my Chiron in the 10th house, which is my Chiron. Oh man, that wounded healer that has to go and like lead, even though they feel inferior all the time, is so highlighted right now. And it's right on top of Eddie's sun, both of which align with the pole star. My Chiron and his sun are right on top of the pole star. Okay, so find this. Also, if you have any planets square that axis, this Gemini Sagittarius axis, we also have the other two mutable signs, Pisces and Virgo. Those are going to be the signs that are feeling it the most. So if you have planets particularly near 27 degrees, which is the exact degree of this moon, in any of these signs, Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Gemini, those are really feeling it. That's that 90-degree aspect I talk about a lot that like manifests things into reality. The other ones, trines, sextiles, those are more free-flowing energies that we don't necessarily feel. So if you have planets there, you're feeling it. Also, if you have planets near 27 degrees of Aquarius, Jupiter is there right now, and it is trining this moon. So it is also very much in play in a very harmonious way. Okay, so before we go like full blown all over, let's just talk about some normal stuff, okay? Gemini is immutable, so it's shiftable, changeable air. It is not the start of a season. It is not the fixed part of a season. It's the shifting of the season. It's the ending part that shifts into another. So, for example, this moon falls very close to the cardinal axis. That is the shifting point between seasons. Eddie's birthday is actually right on the summer solstice. He's on the day that actually shifts, the 21st. So depending on what time you're born on that day, depends on if you are a Capricorn, I'm not a Capricorn, if you are a Gemini or a Cancer. So that's that shifting of the seasons. It is an air sign, and it is considered masculine and mental based, but I wanted to put here that it governs duality. Here you see two dudes, but in a lot of the mythology, it's actually a brother and a sister, depending on where you're looking. So it governs duality, but it governs duality of the mind. So I like to think of it as governing like our analytical mind, yes, but both sides of the mind, and ultimately helping both sides of the mind see each other and find some sort of like a middle ground. So while it is a masculine air element sign, I hate to categorize it that way, especially since it's also ruled by Mercury, who is not a masculine planet. It is a hermaphroditic planet, and it is both feminine and masculine merged as one. So the Gemini is ruled by Mercury, who is the messenger of the gods. He is responsible for conveying information between our mortal minds and the gods or the planets, right? He is the bringer of consciousness and self-awareness. And he's said to kind of like carry the torch of consciousness through the chart. And where he is transiting is where our mind is at. And so knowing where Mercury is at is know where you can really, do a lot of the alchemy that he's there to do, because he is the hermaphrodite, the alchemist. He's also the trickster, depending on what archetype he's manifesting. He can manifest this deep wisdom and self-knowledge, but also this trickster mentality, depending on like if you're doing the work or not. He is the planet of communication, analytical thought, the rational mind, learning, thinking processes, mental frequency, wisdom, and self-knowledge, which it's kind of like why this is going to be so information dense. Ascension Angel says, I'm kind of lost here, but my sun is in Sag in the 3rd house in the 2nd degree. We're going to pull a chart here in a second and we'll look at the chart. But your sun in Sag in the 3rd house at the 2nd degree is right by the nodes right now, which are getting ready to transit out. So it's definitely a focus for sure. And this entire eclipse story has been a focus for you. And you said it is in your 3rd house. So that is the house of the mind. That's actually the house that's ruled by Gemini. So I assume you're an Aries rising. And that is the house of the mind, of the analytical mind, of communication, of learning, all of the stuff we're talking about here, right here. I guess we can read this next passage. The 3rd house. The 3rd house of the mind, all forms of communication, our school years, learning, siblings, immediate environment, short travel, neighbors, language, and the flow of information. And some words that describe Gemini's archetype are versatile, adaptable, intellectual, witty, charming, logical, often too much, energetic, spontaneous, lively, chatty, amusing, changeable, dualistic. The book that I was referencing for this, just to make my life easier, it said two-faced. They always call them two-faced. I don't like that. It's not true. They're dualistic. They have multiple manifestations of themselves and multiple personalities, which, you know what? That's cool because sometimes people's personalities get annoying and it's nice when they have a new one. Restless, cunning, inquisitive, inconsistent for sure, and transparent. And in the world, Gemini rules trade, distribution of goods, all forms of communication and information, education, media, a country's infrastructure, and transportation systems. And then these are some herbs that are associated with Gemini if you'd like to use them in any sort of full moon ritual. It's also interesting to note, I didn't put it here, and now I wish I had, because they just announced that Brussels in Belgium announced that they'll be the first city to ban 5G infrastructure. And I had just read that Belgium is actually governed by Gemini in mundane astrology. So is Melbourne, Australia, and a couple of others. I posted it in my stories and on the Discord. And I find it interesting because Gemini in mundane astrology governs Belgium. It also governs technology, 5G, so it would cover 5G. It also governs communication networks, so it would govern 5G. And then this is a full moon where we have like a purging and a release, and they're like purging and releasing themselves of that communication network, which I find super interesting because astrology is weird. Okay, so let's dive into the chart really quick before we go full-blown, out there, crazy, esoteric, unlocking the secrets of the sky. These are the main aspects to this moon. So if you want to take a screenshot and reference this back later, this is what you're going to look for in your chart. The main aspects. The moon is conjunct Polaris at 27 degrees of Gemini. It sits opposite the sun, which is conjunct the galactic center at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. It trines the moon. The moon trines Jupiter at 28 degrees of Aquarius. And it's also in a grand cross, if you want to go in a little bit deeper, with the asteroids Alexandria and then Neptune and Sophia, which have been key players for quite some time. And then there are all of the Arthurian archetypes. So we're going to go ahead and just check that out really quick because I have it right here pulled up. LOL. Melly says, LOL, they're all 5G here in Melbourne. Yeah, they went the other way. Well, you know, Gemini, they got to be dualistic about it. So Belgium is the capital city for the European Union. So it's like... it has a lot of elites there. Switzerland does as well for the UN and a lot of corporations, and they have also halted it as well, which is interesting because that is where CERN is, and supposedly CERN needs like a whole bunch of internet, so you would think they would need the 5G, but no, they just gotta invent it for the rest of us. Okay, I don't want to touch on this too much because honestly I think it's really cool, but we're going to talk about how even this mythology, the Arthurian legends, are ultimately talking about the Axis Mundi, and so I kind of want to get there. But before we go to the chart, I do want to just kind of touch, I wrote this here, on some of these. So look at, we have Excalibur at 12 degrees of Scorpio sitting opposite Uranus, and it actually sits on the angles. It sits on the midheaven, but only here for me in Los Angeles, because this is Los Angeles time. So it looks like it's in a super cool, significant place in the chart, but honestly, that's only because this is my local time. Yep, they're rolling it out everywhere else. Janalo says, my sun is in the 8th house and it's 27 degrees Gemini. Oh my gosh, okay. Your sun is in the 8th house of the mysteries, and it's conjunct the point here tonight. That is like super profound. That's super rad. Okay, hold on. Okay, I could geek out on like all your guys' charts. Okay, so Excalibur sits opposite Uranus. We have Camelot exactly conjunct the South Node. You don't see it here because they don't put the South Node. I would have had to have added it on the software. This is astro.com. It's a really great place to get your chart for free, by the way. And they have all the asteroids, most of the asteroids. But as you can see, the North Node is here at 1 degrees of Gemini, which means the South Node is here at 1 degrees of Sagittarius on top of Camelot. The South Node is like the past, and so it's like this Camelot story is resurfacing from the past because it has some sort of like forgotten wisdom to bestow upon us. Mars is there, and so it's bringing a sort of like action and quest type vibe to it. Like we're really feeling it. The motivation, I'm feeling strangely motivated. I'm not sure. It's probably because my chart is just being lit up right now. It's kind of crazy. Guinevere is conjunct the sun and opposite this moon. Morgana, and this is Percival, are conjunct the, they didn't have one actually named after the knight Percival. This is named after, I believe, an astronomer whose name is Percival, but I used it for him and it's here. So we have Morgana and Percival conjunct Mercury. And then we have Merlin conjunct Pluto and Venus and Arthur. Like they're all right here together. With Pluto and Venus right in between Merlin and Arthur. Lancelot is off by 7 degrees, but it's pretty much conjunct Saturn. And Gawain is off by 5 degrees, but it's very close to Neptune and right on top of Sophia. And Gawain is actually one of the ones who goes on the Grail quest. So it's interesting that he's on top of Sophia, that primordial feminine right now, in Pisces, the cosmic womb. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, super interesting. We're going to talk about why that's interesting here in a little bit, but I do want to pull up the regular chart and do a little bit of regular astrology. Okay. You guys, I don't even know how to express how many notes I have. It's crazy. This moon has consumed my life for a very long time, but I think it's like going to be the bulk of my book, so I think it's important. Okay. So this is a picture of the moment of the full moon. It is Los Angeles time, but I used an Aries rising chart, so it just has natural houses. They just fall in their natural houses. As you can see, the moon falls here at 27 degrees of Gemini conjunct the pole star. Polaris, which we're going to dive into heavy here in a second through a lot of slides and a PDF. So I just want to kind of cover some of the astrology first. And it's sitting here with a couple of other asteroids, Black Moon, Lilith, and the North Node. So we have Ceres, which is another archetype that we've been diving into extensively over on Patreon. For those of you who are new, these videos kind of build, not kind of, these videos definitely build on top of one another. And we're like building upon these like esoteric archetypes and like trying to put more and more meaning into what we see. And so I definitely recommend going back and watching some. I'm going to make a list and I'm going to post it in Discord of the ones that it's like, watch these ones. There's some important things here. I don't know why I'm writing that on that paper like I'll ever see it again. I'll remember. No, I won't. Somebody will remind me. I'll remember eventually. Okay. So Ceres is another archetype of Demeter, which is the mother of Persephone, who is also here as well, all on top of the North Node. We've been diving very deep into those archetypes on Patreon and the initiations that take place in the underworld, in the subconscious, in the unconscious, in the unseen, unknown realms, and the wisdom that can be obtained through those quests, which ultimately is going to culminate as this northern star that sits here at the base of the chart, only a few degrees away from the subconscious mind itself. And we're going to dive into that here in a second. But ultimately, this is that gold that we're searching. The pole star is the still point in the sky that all other stars rotate around. And right now, it sits in the sign of Gemini. It sits in the sign of the split of polarity. But it is this like, I look at it very much like the pineal gland between the two hemispheres of the brain, the still point between extremes, the 0 point between polarizations. It's in the sign of polarization, but it's traveled this whole thing. I'm getting into all that other processional stuff that we're going to cover here in a second. I said I was going to talk about regular astrology, so I guess I probably should do that. We're at the tail end of an 18-month eclipse story. This is our second of two, what I'm calling illuminations, because that's what they are. When we have a full moon, we have a culmination of energy in that sign that has reached its peak. It's ready to harvest. It has culminated, and then it's also ready to release. And so we're simultaneously experiencing a culmination, an illumination, and a release. And much of what this illumination is going to be about is what this eclipse story has been about for you. So what houses are these falling in? How much has shifted here? As you can see, the nodes are at 0 degrees. They transit backwards, and they're about to enter the signs of Taurus and Scorpio. They've transited through this entire sign, and they've really changed a lot for all of us, but it's not done yet. This is one of the culminations, and then we have another one in 6 months that will be a culmination of the Sagittarius new moon that we had 2 weeks ago. That'll be when we finally really truly see what this is all about. Full moons, we don't do too much. You know, you want to kind of look and see what is this aspecting in your chart? How is this affecting you? What are you being asked to look at? When I say this moon brings an illumination, it does just that. It takes a flashlight into the darkness, just like the moon is a light in the night sky, and it shines into that area. And so right now it is shining into this area that is governed by Gemini. This is actually a really beautiful moon. The energy this month is intense. We have some crazy things, some big shifts happening. Venus going retrograde, Chiron stationing direct. We have Saturn square Uranus. We have Pandora conjunct Atlantis on the winter solstice, which I really feel, I just keep hearing the Atlantean box of secrets is opened. I don't know what that means, but I feel like it's going to be some sort of floodgates, and they're just inching closer and closer and closer together. And we have like a lot of things happening, but then we have this moon that literally feels like a breath of fresh air. Not only from its air sign, Gemini, which really literally rules the like breath of air. It's trining Jupiter in Aquarius, which is also bringing that benefic Jupiter energy, that Aquarian energy. Aquarius and Gemini, they love each other. All the air signs do. We're the only ones who get each other. And it really brings that sort of just like, I'm just calling it like a moment of breath, like a moment of stillness in one's breath. And it's duplicative of that pole star, that still point in the chaos that is the cosmic realm of just like spinning and spinning and spinning, and the wheels within wheels within wheels, right? But then there is this illusion of stillness, and it's that illusion of stillness that we can find within, because ultimately energy doesn't stop moving. I don't think the wheel ever stops turning. And so it definitely is this like illusion of a hole in the illusion. It's an illusion of a hole in the illusion that helps us to kind of see beyond it. But it's definitely a very mental energy right now. We already are in the middle of Sagittarius season. My Sag stellium is a very heady, and it's that like outer philosophical headiness where you're just like not even here. Gemini came to kind of bring some logic to the expansion that was happening during Sagittarius season, which we're now at the tail end of, and it's come to really help us bring some analytical thought to the philosophical thought that we have been pursuing, and merge these two things into something that hopefully makes sense, or if not, at least it's information dense, which both of these signs have heavily love. They heavily love a widespread smorgasbord of information in order to then ultimately make their own decisions based upon, explored belief systems. So look and see where Aquarius falls in your chart right now. Jupiter is there right now. It's training this moon. And so that house and any sort of planets you have right there are there to lend aid to this opposition that's seeking some sort of balance right now. This is a full moon that is paired with an eclipse. It's very faded. Everything that's happening right now is so faded and destined. I try not to do too much. Just like lean in and see what's trying to come through. We're still in this very like portal-like energy where information is trying to come through to you. Your chart is trying to speak to you. The sky is trying to speak to you. Your reality is trying to speak to you through synchronicity. And there's some sort of like initiation that we're all working towards right now that's culminating right now at this moon and this solstice point. We're going to get in there in 1 second. I just want to see if there's anything else I want to say. We probably should just talk about a couple of the other key things happening right now. So Chiron stationing direct. Look and see where Aries is in your chart. This is where we're starting a new cycle of integrating core wounds, deep core wounds. We've done a lot of work here though, so give yourself a pat on the back because we just finished an entire retrograde cycle, and I think we have moved beyond some of them. But, you know, it's a constant process. And now we're starting a new cycle of being able to kind of see a little bit more of what maybe was extremely repressed. This is in Aries. And so it is that like repressed, instinctual, reptilian part of our mind. It is our instincts, right? And so sometimes Aries energy definitely needs triggers in order to even see anything. They are the sign of triggers. They trigger the zodiac. They start the zodiac. They are one giant trigger. We also have Venus stationing retrograde in Capricorn. I don't have the date here, but it looks like it's already stationing here at the time of this moon. I think it is the day after the moon. I think it's on the 17th. I could actually tell you if you give me 1 second. It's the 19th. So Chiron stations direct and Venus stations retrograde on the 19th. So yeah, it is the day after the moon. And that's in the sign of Capricorn, right on top of Pluto. This is like everything. It's dualistic, okay? This is like deep transformations in deeply committed relationships, because this is Capricorn, this is Saturnian, this is the Lord of marriage itself. And Pluto and Venus. It could be deeply transformative relationships, like big endings, or it could be like the solidifying of these like deeper soul connections through like symbolic representations of commitment of some sort. It doesn't have to be like a full-blown ceremony, but like little gestures through this retrograde cycle. I don't see this as being necessarily bad. A lot of people are like, oh my God, Venus is going retrograde on top of Pluto. Like, it's some horrible thing. I don't know. All these planets seem to kind of like that. I really just kind of see it as it can being a solidification or cutting ties with something that was not for you at all, because Capricorn ain't about that. And Pluto is ready to like burn some bridges if they're not for us anymore. But, don't freak out about this. The posts are going to start coming and they're going to make it out to be like everything is going to be so horrible and all of your ex-boyfriends and girlfriends are going to call you, and you know what, they might. But just, you know, it's going to be a transformative time for relationships and values, because Venus rules values and money. This is actually really good for money. Retrogrades focus their attention on an area of the sky. The planet goes retrograde for a little bit, transiting an area that it had already transited before. From our perspective on Earth, the planet is not actually going backwards. It just looks like that from Earth because of our position, and I could go into the technicalities, but we would be here for a long time. And then it will station direct and it will go again. And so it transits an area of the sky 3 times. And so it's like, hey, focus on this. It's not like, hey, wow, look at that area of the zodiac. I'm really going to come around and fuck that up for no apparent reason, just to destroy things because, yay, chaos. Like, no, none of them are doing that. There's too much order in the universe for that. We can get in the way and cause chaos if we fight what is trying to unfold. And I think that a lot of the problem I have with modern astrology is the fucking fear-mongering of all of these transits just being so horrible. And I'm like, you guys give these planets, which is just aspects of you, way too much power. Like, come on. There's so many manifestations here of these archetypes. We're not set in any sort of stone. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, Jupiter. Jupiter is going to enter Pisces. Okay, so Jupiter right now is in Aquarius, at the tail end of Aquarius, and it's trining this moon. And then it is going to enter Pisces, which is the ancient ruler of. It ruled Pisces before Neptune was discovered, and now they both rule Pisces, although some people forget to mention that Jupiter is there too, because they just use the modern rulership. I use both. And he's going to be home, and he is going to like it. And it is going to be magical and mystical and expansive. And I'm actually very excited for this transit. But it will be, like, we are entering the realm of fantasy. We are entering the realm of illusions. We are entering like, there's no boundaries in Pisces. We can't touch it. It's etheric. It is illusionary. It is confusing. And we can't get caught up in the illusion. We have to find the plug and pull it. And so that's what we're going to be diving into here. Okay, does anybody, I know there's some new people. Does anybody have any questions about anything regular happening in their chart? Does anybody want to say anything or ask anything while we have normal astrology up here? Before I go full-blown esoteric, let's unlock the secrets of the sky. Feel free to write anything in the chat. I'm going to drink this. I am also going to smoke some sage. Okay. But I'm not trying to get in trouble, so I am taking my thing off. Okay, yeah, if anybody wants to type in a thing or their video or their what planet they have there or something about a house or something, I'll see what comes up. Oh, I wanted to touch on this. Hold on. It's clogged. Dang it. Okay. So I want to touch on this Grand Cross. This is this main axis of polarity that we're really feeling here right now. And we're going to dive into that heavily here because it is this axis in astrology that is so important. That you've followed me for a while. You've heard me talk about gate of man, gate of the gods, all that jazz. And then we have this T-square happening with, not super wide orbs. We have Alexandria at 23 degrees of Virgo, square the moon. It's off by some degrees. Not all asteroid astrologers would use that. Some would say it's kind of too wide of an orb, but you know me, I don't follow the rules. And then we have Neptune over here at 20 degrees. Neptune is a planet, so we use a much wider orb for him. And he's definitely square this moon. And so we already have that sort of like fantasy illusionary realm. And I will say that fantasy, movies, books, television, like so many things led me here. It was like almost leaning into the escapism of the fantasy realm. Really unlocked a lot of things for me. And so like, don't fight it. We have to find, this is a Grand Cross, right? All four of these energies are ultimately seeking balance with each other, and they all ultimately hold something for us. The lost, forgotten wisdom of the ancient past, represented by Alexandria, the mystical, magical fantasy realm of illusion, but of mysticism and ultimate truth somewhere amongst the illusion, because Pisces, you have to remember, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. Pisces is when we merge back with all that is, the Akasha, the cosmic womb, the cosmic waters. It's everything. It has all of it. The lies, the truth, all of it. And so we can navigate this illusionary labyrinth and ultimately find said truth. But we have to know that we're in the dream. And I've said this before, like a lot of people, they think like, oh, I woke up. Oh, I woke up and now I'm awake. And it's like, no, like we just realize that we were sleeping and we wake up, but we're still in the dream. We're just like lucid now. And I think that's what we have to realize. It's like we are living in a literal illusionary fantasy mirror realm. And at times that gets cranked up. And this square with Neptune here right now and Jupiter transiting into here is going to crank that up. It is going to crank it up. And we have to learn how to flow with it. Like flow with the labyrinth until we find the center, or we will just get lost and drowned in the sea. Okay. Kathleen says that my south node is at 12 degrees of Sag. Ooh, that's conjunct the great attractor. It's in the 10th house of career. So Gemini is her north node. No. So her south node is into. Okay, so Gemini is her north node in the 4th house. How long does a nodal transit usually take? So you're flipped. So that's a 7-year. So it's about 12 years for the nodal return and a node reversal. You are having a nodal return. So Gemini, the north node is in the 4th house. You are having a nodal return. And what degree is that at? 12 degrees. Okay. So the last Sagittarius moon was literally right on top of your node. Think back to that time, what was going on for you. That one was really significant for you. And it's like the start of a story. It's like the start of the seeds that were being planted that are going to culminate in 6 months. Google and read up on nodal returns. That is what you're at the tail end right now. Pretty much what it is when the nodes come back around to where they were when you were born, and fate and destiny literally take the reins, and you're just like set on track to where you're supposed to be. It all often comes with a lot of like destruction in the wake, because everything that was not in alignment with like literally your karmic soul path of purpose will fall to the wayside, so that you can like get on this accelerated path to where you're supposed to be going. And for you, this is going to be simultaneously happening in your 4th and 10th house. So your career and your home life are changing a lot. This could also have a lot to do with the parents. And also like early life trauma, the subconscious mind, and your just like overall general purpose. Hopefully I made sense. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm gonna try to hopefully make some sense here. This, I wanted to show you guys the original sketch for this, but it is so crazy. I won't embarrass myself that bad. I know I'm one to tell the internet a whole bunch of shit, but I'm not showing you that madness. I was in the shower, high on edibles, and this came to me, and there was way more to it, but I can't decipher those codes. And I got out of the shower, and Eddie was waiting for me in bed, and I like ran in here and I like drew this whole thing, and I was like, tomorrow I'm going to come back to these notes and I'm going to make this diagram, and it is going to crack the lid off of everything. And then the next day I came back and I'm like, what? Just this. My handwriting is so bad. I need to slow down because I have no idea what all the notes said. But this is what we're going to try to talk about here. Why is that star not showing it? Okay, well, that's supposed to be serious. I'm just going to delete that because it's going to annoy me. Okay. Thank you so much. So much destruction. LOL. Yeah. I will say that I have become a fan of destruction. I used to be like, why is this always happening to me? But now I realize that if that had not happened to me, like where I would be is just not great at all. So now I welcome it. I definitely welcome it. Besides, that destructive ground is fertile for those seeds that just planted 2 weeks ago. Like hella fertile. Okay. So why am I over here talking like this and this thing is not showing? Oh, because I need to show it like this. Okay, sorry guys. So you guys couldn't even see what I was talking about. Okay, so this is what I was talking about that whole time when you guys didn't know what I was saying. Okay. As you will see when we get into this PDF here in a second, how this actually lays out in the sky is kind of up for debate. Also, I am trying to depict a 3-dimensional diagram on a 2-dimensional space. And so some of this, like the zodiac, goes this way, while the pole star sits more above. And so this part of the depiction actually kind of goes like this. Hopefully this is going to make sense once I kind of get into it here. Yeah, but what I kind of want to get across here right now is that this is not exactly how it looks. Obviously, we know Earth is not flat, although as you will see in some of the videos that I have linked on that PDF, when you start to dive into pole star mythologies, northern mythologies, the Axis Mundi, these polar myths, you do the flat earth people love it. So like flat earth is all over this thing, and a lot of people will argue that the earth is flat. And you know what? If tomorrow I found out that the earth was flat, nothing would surprise me anymore. But I will say that it doesn't make sense for eclipses and astrology. I can't get with it. But there are some flat earth astrologers, and I'm just like, make it make sense, bro. And then I'll watch their videos. I'm like, you're not making it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Okay. So anyway, this is a 3-dimensional depiction on a 2-dimensional space. So it's kind of hard to understand. But if you guys have been following me for a minute and you've watched some of my videos, particularly my Atlantis video, my Ophiuchus video, even the Cancer Moon video that I linked to the thing, you've seen me talk about this cardinal axis. I talk about it a lot. I talk about how the cardinal axis aligns with the black holes. So we have the super galactic center here at the start of Libra. We have the galactic center at the end of Sagittarius and at the start of Capricorn. And then we have the pole star opposite that at the end of Gemini and the start of freaking Cancer. And in esoteric astrology, apparently, I've actually found a lot of people who say this now, when before I kind of thought I made it up, but I knew I had heard part of it somewhere, and then I like decoded a bunch of stuff in the sky and developed my own sort of theory around it. But I knew something had triggered it, and it was connected to Ophiuchus in general, and the fact that him as the serpent bearer here is integrating the serpent, and his foot is on the galactic center, opening the gate of the gods, right? That super consciousness that sits beyond the solar consciousness and is holding a galactic consciousness together. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that hole in space-time goes to, but I know it's older and more ancient than our solar sun or any of the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, or any star for that matter. And that it is some form of super consciousness. And so we have that here, making what is known as the gate of the gods and the gate of man. And we're going to dive into that here a lot deeper. I just want to kind of lay out this depiction here. And I channeled this. Okay, I was trying to merge together all of my concepts. This cardinal cross of the black holes and the pole star. This concept that developed of the womb and the light. So if you see here, we have the 3 earth signs and the 3 water signs depicted here. Kind of like that well concept that we were diving into a couple of videos ago. Those are the feminine elements. And then there's this, I didn't know, so I made that. And then I don't know why I made this cross. I'm not sure why I made it. I think it was because I was contemplating the concept of the other poles. We have a North Pole and a South Pole, and I was contemplating the concept of like an East and West Pole, which we're going to get into here in a second. And for some reason I drew that cross there, and I realized that it's a cross between the air and fire signs, which is consciousness itself. Those are the masculine signs. Fire and air together bring light, bring consciousness. And so I kind of looked at this as like this like cosmic womb and this like spark of consciousness. We'd also have another yellow line here connecting Libra and Aries as well, because those are also fire and air signs. And so it would kind of be this like star almost, this like spark of consciousness in the womb. And I was trying to kind of depict the concept of the world tree and the axis mundi and the earth, and how the center point is ultimately the heart, and this fire that we light in the heart, and this like merging of all these things together at the center. And I made this a week ago or something. And then I really started, I don't know where I got this motivation to just dive into so many books. I don't know if you guys can see this chaos here. I'm going to turn this camera. There's like, to my bong, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But this huge stack of books, and obviously I didn't read them cover to cover. I used them as references for certain constellation stars, keywords, and whatnot. But I really compiled a huge PDF that breaks down how ultimately all of these ancient cultures and mythologies, even many that we have been diving into lately, are speaking of this concept of the poles, of the polarity of the poles. And then I just went off the deep end, you guys. So this is something that has been developing for a very long time. This is another sigil that I channeled a very long time ago in order to kind of depict the wheel of the year and the unification of the extremes. And so what we have here is, winter solstice, summer solstice. I guess it's upside down. Winter solstice, the equinox, summer solstice, and the other equinox, our autumn equinox, our spring equinox. These are the other cross points of the wheel of the year. We actually have 8 solar holidays. There are midpoints between our solstices and our equinoxes. And this is the spiral that like unites in the middle. And this was another thing that like I spontaneously channeled. Sometimes I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to make a symbol, and I like encode it with specific symbolism for something, but this one, it like came to me, and I remember actually getting out of bed to make this one, and I've used it a lot. And this was way before I dove into this concept of the axis mundi, and now I see that that's literally what I was depicting this entire time. Okay, Janelle says that she put her full moon in Gemini transit natal chart on Discord. Cool. What software did you use? Did you use astro.com? Okay, so this, I actually forgot all about this, you guys. This is from when I went back to the Cancer video where I really dove into the pole star to see what slides I made back then and to try to remember what I was talking about when I was really diving into this concept of the gates opening. And I had made this slide back then, and I know we were talking about Hyperborea, and this is like a Russian artist. And we were discussing this concept of like the world soul and like aligning with the galactic center and the pole star and all of that. But I cannot remember the source for this. I know I said it in the video, but obviously I didn't cite it on this slide. And so I don't know. But I remember when I found it being like, what the heck? And it's mythology connected to the poles. Esoteric mythology connected to the poles. I'm just going to read this really quick because this is already where I was at before I even knew about any of this stuff. And that's how I know I'm on the right track. If I were to just read this all in the book, I would be like, that's a cool theory. But because I was forced to kind of like put this together myself, step by step by step, and many of the times I found all the things independent in a much more difficult way, and then I would read it in a book, and I'm like, okay, I'm not the first person to do this. Okay. A fable of Argus tells of a time when the constellation of Cancer was at the South Pole. opposite the goat, which is Capricorn, at the north. The Earth then lay on her side, the terrestrial and the ecliptic poles coinciding with one another. During this ancient age, the mother created from her own bosom, and the lords of the moon brought forth men of their own nature. The fathers of the sacred flame had not yet come, but the form of man was made ready by the sacrificial workers. This may be why the Chaldean and Platonic philosophy, Cancer is called the gate of men, the oldest constellation. And think about it, Cancer governs the womb. It's the mother. It's how we got here. Of course it's the gate of man. It's the oldest constellation and the witness of the first acts of creation. As the 18th of the Hebrew paths of wisdom, called the house of inflowing. It was the gate through which souls descend after passing through the pillars of Gemini, the pillars of Hercules, the pillars of duality. It may have marked the polar entrance of the earth through which souls poured in, and perhaps when at her northerly extreme, it will be the exit through which they leave. The soul, having passed through the monad to the duad, now extends itself out through the vehicle of a name and form in the domain of Cancer. Okay, before we go on, I want to show you guys this. You should be able to see my thing. I'm sharing my screen, but you should be able to see it. Okay, so in the Atlantis video, which if you guys are new, you guys are going to have to watch these videos because, like I said, I keep expanding on all these concepts. But in my Atlantis video and in the Cancer video there, I discussed the precessional movement. So right now, the galactic center is at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. The pole star is at 28 degrees of Gemini. And the supergalactic center is at 2 degrees of Libra. Okay? These are fixed stars or fixed points, but really they do move. They move in what's known as the precession of the equinoxes, which is a 26,000 year cycle. It takes about 26,000 years for the stars to rotate all the way around. They move 1 degree, one zodiacal degree, every 72 years. So in our lifetime, it's hard to tell, but the ancients did calculations and they knew about this. And all of these myths are ultimately talking about precession. And so in my Atlantis video, I don't know why I did this. Many times I don't know why I do this. I just do things and then they pan out. In the Atlantis video, I turned the sky backwards. I turned the clock back, which, I guess we're done with this chart here. So I guess we can kind of do that here and I'll kind of show you. So I'm moving the sky a year at a time. So every time I click this button, it's moving 1 year. Okay? I'm not going to do it yet, but I'm going to do it in a second. Every 72 years, it moves 1 degree. In the Atlantis video, I showed how when you move it all the way back to supposedly the fall of Atlantis, the time of the Younger Dryas, about 11,500 BC, around that time, everybody claims, there was a great flood. We are actually a mirror image of where the stars were at the fall of Atlantis. So the stars that were up here during the fall of Atlantis are now down here, and the stars that were down here during the fall of Atlantis are now up here. We're literally mirroring it. And then I was really zeroing in on this cardinal axis and the fact that these black holes are in these mutable signs and they're shifting into this cardinal signs. And since the beginning of astrology, this was one of the first things I geeked out on. Before I literally even knew what all of the houses were or all of the correspondence, I knew all the black holes and the stars, and I was focused on precession. Today I remembered that the first video that I ever did for astrology, I did for this collective or cult that I started with a couple of people, and where I was not super able to kind of like do my own thing. I was more being kind of forced to be more mainstream and do normal astrology. But I remember the first video I ever did was for a Virgo moon. And I remembered this today when I pulled out this globe that we're about to look at here in a second. I pulled out this globe and I had a flashback to my first ever, thank God this is not on the internet anymore because we since disbanded. But my first ever video was for a Virgo video. And I spent most of the video with a globe explaining precession of the equinoxes and how the fixed star Regulus had since moved out of Leo and into Virgo, and how this was shifting the ages. And like, I got so heady, you guys. And my friend was like, whoa, like, I don't think we're going to be able to reel her back. And no, you're not going to be able to reel me back, because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Precession is what is important. We live in a cyclical reality, and this is our great cycle. These are the great shifts. Just like a full moon or an eclipse comes to bring these little shifts in our life. You know, Kathleen, that lovely destruction that you're going through right now, that fated, destined destruction, these little shifts. And then we have these huge shifts, and the huge collective shifts happen on this processional shift, right? And so then I had noticed that the Super Galactic Center had, this is all in the Atlantis video. I recommend watching the Atlantis video. But I had noticed that the Super Galactic Center had already entered Cardinal Libra. And so I was like, when did this happen? And so I went back in time and I found the date, and it was in the 1800s, right exactly around the time that Theosophy was popping off, all of the occult Atlantean revivals. Everybody was diving into Atlantis and the occult, and I think it was literally the year that Ignatius Donnelly wrote his book, I think. If not, it was so close, but it was all around when literally this revival. The only reason we're even here talking about chakras or anything like that is because of like this public mystery school stream that came out, and, you know, maybe they had good intentions. I think some of them had good intentions, but ultimately now we have the New Age movement, and it's just utter bullshit. But this all started in the 1800s, and it really started when the Super Galactic Center made it into Libra. And so then I was like, okay, if the Super Galactic Center has now made it into Libra, when will the Galactic Center make it to this cardinal point, the top of the chart, right? The top of the mountain, cardinal Capricorn, the winter solstice, that period right here. When does this happen? And so I went back. I did this in the video, but then I just rechecked it today because I want to give you guys the right dates. Because I was like, this is when the gate of the gods opens, right? This is what we're working towards. It's not necessarily in this incarnation, but we are on some sort of long count calendar where these things are ticking back. And then I noticed, I was like, okay, well, you know, Polaris is at 28 degrees. That is actually going to make it first. Polaris will make it into Cancer before the Galactic Center makes it into Capricorn. And these are the dates. So I went back in time like this, all the way back, right? Let me just go back to where we were, because it's not important. We don't have to do this. I wanted to stay on the moon. And Polaris will enter Cardinal Cancer, which we just read on that last slide, apparently is super important. That's where it used to be, right? It will enter it in the year 2102. So in 80 years, that star will like open that first gate. I think we're waiting for 2 different gates to open, right? Esoterically speaking, initiatorily speaking. And the Galactic Center will enter Capricorn in the year 2225. So about 203 years, this axis that already started opening in the 1800s, that is mirror image to whatever opened in Atlantis, because we're at a mirror image, right? These were just opposites. So the Galactic Center was here, and the pole star was here, and the Super Galactic Center was here at during Atlantis, and now we are flipped. and we're getting open, where the clock is ticking, ticking, ticking. And I really think that particularly the pole star entering Cancer, these black holes, they may have known of in the past if they were very, if they knew what was out there. But it's because of modern instruments that we know that those are here, but they definitely knew about the pole star. And so at the very least, that is the key that we're waiting to open. But ultimately, it is what's pointing us to this galactic super consciousness that's ultimately going to open in 200 years. But this is something that I've been diving into pretty heavily over in some of those other videos that I've mentioned just several times. Okay. So, a couple other crazy things. I just have a bunch of crazy pictures here that sparked things. Okay. Again, I have no idea where this image comes from, but it is perfectly illustrating what is happening. Like, the person is that axis mundi. It is that world tree, that polar axis that I'm going to really dive into here and like outline for you. And it's aligned with that like galactic gate of the gods and that pole star that is the gate of man that has to open first before we can ever enter that other gate, right? We really have to make right with our human in the gate of man. So in the dualistic realm of Gemini and the mind, and the subconscious realm of Cancer and the subconscious mind, we really have to make right with that aspect of ourselves. That is where we are going to find this pole star that will ultimately unlock this gate beyond. This is a depiction of the Earth's said meteor shower, which happens every year on the winter solstice from this area of the sky. So every year, the winter solstice at Christmas, when the focus is already very much on the pole star and the northern star and the North Pole and all that's connected to it, which we're going to dive into here maybe if we get to the PDF. If not, you guys, there's like a huge PDF you guys can read. I compiled so much research, but this is going to be a book. But every year, on the winter solstice, there's a meteor shower that happens from this area of the sky. And so when the ancients look up and they look and the pole star and the North Pole area at the winter solstice, the time of birth of this like Christ figure that's very much associated by this pole star. Buddha is as well, which we're going to dive into here in a second. The sky is like raining light codes from that area, and the ancients really noticed this. Meteor showers are a key element of mythology that span back, and so is this pole star as well, and the Big Dipper. Okay, do you guys remember in our last video when I talked all about Odysseus and the Odyssey? And I had zeroed in on the fact that the Odyssey is a 20-year saga, right? It's 20 years of this guy's life. And I already knew this is an esoteric text. And so I was like, what planetary configuration is on a 20-year cycle? And I know already that that is the Great Conjunction. And I talked about how Saturn is the planet of initiation and Jupiter is the planet of expansion and travel, and how he was like on a quest of initiation. And that is why perhaps they were referencing the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, the Great Conjunctions. Well, this is from Hamlet's Mill. And this is a depiction of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, the Great Conjunctions, throughout a precessional cycle. And apparently they are heavily used to track precession. It is because of the Great Conjunctions that we are able, that it is believed that it is because of the Great Conjunctions that the ancients were able to track precession. because they were able to notice that the stars shifted behind the backdrop of these great conjunctions. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting, considering the Odyssey is a myth about precession and the axis mundi. So in the last video, I talked about how I believed that the Odyssey was ultimately a quest of the masculine back home to the mother and ultimate immortality when he meets his wife at their bed, which sits around a tree. He has his bed built around a tree, and that tree was an olive tree, and I said that it was associated with immortality because olive trees are associated with immortality, and so it was like this union with the feminine. And yeah, that was true. One of the videos I have linked on the PDF is a video where he breaks down the epic of the Odyssey, and how it is literally a processional myth. It's literally about the axis mundi. He's coming back home to the world tree is what he's coming back home to. And so I was definitely onto something with the great conjunction thing there. And that video I recommend watching because he did a really good job of breaking down how ultimately we're on a quest back home to the center. We're on a quest back home to the center within. This is just a magical seal that a lot of the certain fixed stars have these medieval seals, like sigils, and this is the Polaris one. And I thought it was interesting because you can kind of see how I think it looks like Atlantis. Like, you know how Plato's Atlantis is the 3 rings, and then it has this sort of like canal connecting it. It seems like kind of like half of Plato's Atlantis, and then like polar, and then like axis mundi. I like it, so I put it there. It's not super important. Okay, this is though. All right, guys, we're gonna crack some codes here. Okay, so how do I want to do this? Millie says she has Gemini. So the IC in Gemini at 19 degrees. So it's the bottom of your chart. So you are in this like airy mental headspace, but it's in your subconscious mind. And you're simultaneously processing a lot of like early life stuff, but in doing it, unlocking probably deeply intuitive abilities, being that it's down there in your 4th house. Okay. Let's see how I want to go about talking about this. Okay, so we're going to use a couple of globes here to make my point. Okay, so the first thing I noticed, I pulled out a star book and I was looking at this star chart here. And I was actually discussing with, you guys probably know if you follow me, Symbolic Studies. His name is Mario. He just joined the Alliance. Say hi, Mario. Just kidding. And his handle on Instagram is Symbolic Studies. He also has a YouTube channel, so follow him because you guys know I'm a big fan of his work and his research abilities are phenomenal. And I know he is going to appreciate my PDF and my cited sources. But I was talking to him about the pole star, which apparently is his jam too. Apparently that is also his rabbit hole of rabbit holes. And he too has pieced together many of the same things I have. And he had some things I didn't have, and I had some things he didn't have, and we just sent each other on a whole bunch of tips, and he just sent me a whole bunch of DMs. And I know we are about to go there he is. Hi. We're about to go a whole bunch of places. I don't know. But I don't know why I pulled the star chart, guys. I don't know. I just do this, okay? So I pulled it, and I noticed that, and I don't know why I didn't know this before, because I knew this, but I didn't know all these things together. I didn't tie them all together. And I noticed that we have 2 different bands here, and that they cross. And like I said, I knew this. But again, I didn't actually all the way know this. And I started looking at the celestial pole the celestial equator versus the ecliptic. All right. So the ecliptic here is the sun's path during the year. That is the sun's path through the tropical sidereal zodiac as it transits through all of the signs. And most of the planets are around here too. They kind of hover around here, and it's called the ecliptic. And as you can see by this tilt here, half of it is visible for half of us, while the other half is visible for the other half of us, and it switches through the seasons. And that's due to Earth's tilt, right? That only half is seen at a time. Well, then we have this other band of stars known as the equator of the heavens, or the celestial equator, and they house these constellations. Pisces, so the cosmic womb that births the zodiac, plus the start of Aries season, so the vernal equinox point, the birth of the zodiac. And then has Cetus, Taurus, Aratus, which I don't even know what that constellation is, but I'm going to be diving into all of these, you guys. Orion, this is the unicorn, which we're going to be diving into in our Capricorn or Cancer video. Canis Minor, Hydra, Sextans, Leo, Virgo, Serpens, Ophiuchus, which sits on the galactic equator as well, and these other ones as well. Okay. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so I started reading about the celestial equator. You can see this is where it crosses. The celestial equator crosses with the ecliptic in the constellation of Virgo, but this is the point of the autumn equinox. And then it also crosses here in the constellation of Pisces, which is the point of the vernal equinox. That is why we are in the age of Pisces and not the age of Aquarius, which a lot of people like to claim, but it is not true. We are not there yet. And as you can kind of see, these align with the pole star in a on the celestial globe as well. Okay, so why is this interesting? Well, while the zodiac is only able to be seen by half of us at a time, right? Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere type shenanigans. The constellations on the celestial equator are seen by everybody all the time. So if you live on the equator and you look up at nighttime, these constellations will be right overhead. If you live at the North Pole and you look up at nighttime, the pole star will be right up ahead. But people here can see that pole star and that pole star. People everywhere can see this. They can see the celestial equator. The stars that are on the celestial equator, these constellations connect us as a whole. They connect us. They cross at specific points and ultimately need to be integrated. This is where Ophiuchus is. This is where the galactic center is. This is, these are the stars that are honestly often hidden. This unicorn constellation, you guys, I was trying to find the degrees for the freaking stars in that constellation for days. It took me forever. I had to go to DuckDuckGo. It was so hard. And they're in none of those books, but it is a newer constellation from the 1500s. Mario, you have no idea. I haven't even gotten to that PDF yet. And like I said, this needs to be a book, but I have like a lot of stuff I want to say. And I already know I'm going to watch this back and be like, I didn't make any of my points, but you know. Okay. So then you guys, I put my kids' elf on the shelf. I don't know if they're awake, so I need to whisper, but they have a freaking, that fucking Fae elf is my nemesis because I am always forgetting to move it. But I'm sure you guys know what an elf on the shelf is. And I put her over there in the corner on top of my globe, my normal globe, which honestly I have not used in a very long time. And then the next day I'm looking over there at her and I was like, oh my gosh, I need that globe. And I had to wait a whole day for the rest of this rabbit hole because I had to wait for the elf to move. Okay. In my last video, that Cancer video, I floated, and Sharon and we went on with this tip for a while, but now I'm on a different direction. I floated the idea of a third pole. And I remember even like researching, is there a third pole? Is there a fourth pole? And we like zeroed in on this mountain range in the Himalayas, which Tavis, is this where you went? I don't know if you're here, Tavis, but you'll be here at some point. Is this the freaking mountain range that you were talking about? But apparently this is considered Earth's third pole because it has besides Antarctica and the Arctic, it has the densest part of ice. And so it's considered a polar region, even though it's not obviously in a polar point. And so then, now, please bear with me, you guys. I am not well versed in geography. I honestly really hated it growing up. I thought it was stupid, although I did like the latitude and longitude stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. I am not versed in geography. And I was telling Eddie, I was like, listen, it's probably good that I suck at math, because if I was good at math, I would see a lot more patterns in astrology, and I'd be doing like crazy midpoint stuff, and there'd be no end to the puzzles that I would see. It's probably really good that I can't spell, because I'm already super into like etymology, and I would be like sucked into language. And it's probably really good that I'm not good at geography, because now I'm trying to decode globes. But anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, so if we have this North Pole and we have this South Pole, where are the other poles? Like, where are the East and West Pole? And I had remembered that there was a thing called a prime meridian. And like I am not well versed in geography, you guys. And so I had to Google, what the fuck is the prime meridian? And when you Google the prime meridian, what you find is that it runs through Greenwich, England. It is known as the, like you see right here, the meridian of Greenwich. And it said on Google, this is a great circle cut through the earth in the other way as the equator. But really, this circle could be anywhere. We chose Greenwich because it was just easier. And so that's where 0 degrees is, and everything falls from there. But really, ideally, this circle could be everywhere. And I do remember learning that in school. I remember learning like, oh, this is the prime meridian, but it's not like super important or anything. Well, that's fucking bullshit. It didn't take, like I said, I'm not like cracking mad codes here. I just looked at a globe, okay? And I looked and I'm like, okay, well, where does this prime meridian run? And I noticed that the prime meridian crosses the ecliptic and the equator at the equinox point. So this is the spring equinox point. Look, this is the zodiac's ecliptic. As you can see right here is Aries. This is the moment of where the sun is at the time of the vernal equinox. And the prime meridian is drawn at the same point that the ecliptic and the equator, which is the same as the celestial equator, because the celestial equator, those stars that we were just talking about, they sit around Earth's equator. So you can think of this line as the celestial equator, Ophiuchus, the unicorn, those other stars that we talked about. You can think of this as the ecliptic, as the zodiac, crossing right at the equinox point, and then there's this meridian right there. And it runs right through Greenwich, England, and they want us to think it's not important, but it's like, it seems super important, you guys. It's obviously a ley line type thing that they're harnessing there. And so this is one of the poles. And obviously this sits in the Atlantic. It's not exactly where Atlantis would fall. It's much closer to Africa. It's in the Gulf of Guinea, which literally I know nothing about. I tried to Google and I couldn't find anything, but I noticed that there's an island right here and it's called Ascension Island. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay, that seems significant. And so then I looked at the other side of the globe. And this is the, as you can see, Libra is right here. So this is the point of the autumn equinox. Again, this is where the equator, the ecliptic, and the prime meridian cross. And there's a thing called Phoenix Islands over there. And this is probably more where like Lemuria would have been. So this is like the middle of the Pacific, and then there's the middle of the Atlantic. And so I was looking at those as these other like 4 poles, and I was really zeroing in on the fact that this is not new knowledge. They know this. It's written on my random globe that I had over here. And it's definitely being harnessed. The way that the zodiac lays on the earth. I actually got a couple of books from another online bookseller. You know what? You might like this. Mario, and maybe you can help me make sense of it because it is very technical. But it's called The Earth in the Heavens, and it's how the zodiac and the stars lay out on the planet. But apparently this like micronism of the cosmos, and then the earth, and then the human has been very well known throughout time, and is obviously being occulted, which means hidden, and used for power. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the weird synchronicities, you guys. Holy fuck. Every single thing I did all week led me here, okay? So this video was originally going to be me esoterically decoding the Sword and the Stone and the Last Unicorn, but I think we're going to do the Last Unicorn for our next video because it's more prevalent for Capricorn and Cancer, and so we are going to do that. But I watched the Sword and the Stone with my kids, and like we have it on DVD, but my dad sent it with the Christmas presents on Blu-ray, and so it was like new. It just got here. And we're like, okay, let's watch it. I've seen that movie a bunch of times, but like watching it during the season, I see how, wow, this story is literally about initiation, like shooting your arrow into the woods to find the wise wizard and go on a quest, and the Sword and the Stone as being this like Axis Mundi. And I was already on this tip. And then I pulled out the book. So I have the book, The Sword and the Stone. It's like one of my favorite books because it's very, very, very old. I stole this from my dad. It's not like his or anything. I'm pretty sure he just got it at a used bookstore or something. But as a kid, I thought this was so cool and wizard-like. And I would always steal it and look at it and love it. And I was like, pulled it out to show my kids. And I was like, oh, look at this book. Like, this is that movie we just watched. Like, oh, look at this cool picture. And I just flipped it open to this random page, which is that poem right there that I'm not going to read, but you guys are more than welcome to. And I realized this book, just like most books, not most books, but like more esoteric type of books written by, practicing occultists, they have these sort of like esoteric secrets embedded in them. And this is obviously talking about the sky. I'm just going to read this little part right here. In the great sea, the stars swing over, the eternal whirlpool flows. Rest, rest, wild head, in the old bosom, which neither feels nor knows. She only rocks us, cradles in heaven, the reptile and the rose. Her waters which bore us will receive us. Good night and sweet repose. And I was like, oh my God, that's super rad. And then I was showing my kids that book, and they were like, whoa, that old book is cool. Do you have any other old books? And I was like, oh, you know what? I have some really old books of my grandmother's. And they were like, really? I was like, yeah, let me go and get them. And so I go and get these, and a lot of these are like poems. There's like a lot of Emerson and like religious scripture, like the Fall from Paradise and things like that. And I flip through them a lot, and they're beautiful books. I know you guys probably can't see this, but I never noticed this one. I fucking have looked through these books so many times, and this one I literally never noticed before. And it's called The Light of Asia, and it's by this dude right here who is a practicing occultist. I believe he was a theosophist. He wrote the song Celestial, which is a poetic version of the Bhagavad Gita. And then he also wrote this book, The Light of Asia, which is a narrative poem about the birth of Buddha. And I just like opened it, and I already had zeroed in on Buddha being another depiction of this Axis Mundi, which I dive into heavily in this PDF that we might get to at some point. I don't know where we're going with this. But I open it up, and this too, I'm not going to read it, but this is a poem that's literally talking about the soft curled tendril of the swastika in the sky, which is, if you guys remember from the other video I did on the pole star, the swastika is a very ancient symbol that Hitler, like the Axis, so Hitler stole the swastika, which is a very ancient esoteric symbol that depicts this spinning of the Big Dipper around the pole star, and it spans cultures and civilizations. So many ancient cultures are connected to this symbol, and like all relics he was looking for, he stole this, he took it, he flipped it backwards, and then he used it as a relic of control. The same thing he did with the concept of Axis in the World War II. Hitler and Germany and Italy and Japan were known as the Axis powers. And the reason why he was called the Axis powers is Germany was the Third Reich, and he called himself the Third Reich and considered the Roman Empire to be the First Reich. And this concept of the Axis powers is that the world will now turn on a Germany-Rome axis. He was trying to harness this same sort of thing with both the swastika and this concept of the axis. And this poem goes all into, it's really like literally talking all about the sky and the pole star and like moving out of the veil of Maya, and it's just was pretty mind-blowing. I was like, wow. And if that wasn't enough, Sharon, I think you told me about this show, but I don't remember. I rented this the other day at the library because I'm old school as fuck and I still rent things at the library, and I would still rent them at Blockbuster if it existed. And it's the show The Librarians, which I knew nothing about other than the fact that it's about magic and books. And I was like, I'll try it. Magic and books, I'll give it a go. This is a picture of the first couple of episodes. The first one was called The Crown of King Arthur. The second one was called The Sword and the Stone. The third one was called The Horns of Dilemma. And the last one was called Santa's Midnight Run. And I watched these all last night. And yeah, this show is definitely written by a occultist. And it's like, it was like an initiatory build up to this Christmas episode. So the first one is about the crown of King Arthur, and they find it as a painting that's fixed to the wall, and everything else revolves around it. It is this still point that's fixed to the wall, and I was like, wow, that is a total reference to the pole star right there. The Sword and the Stone, there's these two battling mystery schools. There's the librarians, who are the good guys who are holding all the relics in like some Vatican secret library, trying to like keep magic out of the wrong hands. And then there's the Serpent Brotherhood, who's trying to release magic, but in order to control it. They're like the corporations that in this episode are sacrificing interns in the basement to a minotaur. But the Sword and the Stone, the concept of the show is that magic has been siphoned out of Earth's ley lines into relics, like Excalibur, like the Grail, like the Crown of King Arthur, like all of these things. And Earth doesn't have magic anymore. It's in all of these relics. And so in this episode, they get Excalibur and they go and put it back in the stone, and the magic goes back into the ley lines. And I was like, the sword needs to be put back in the stone. We have like removed the power from the earth And that's ultimately what the axis mundi, this axis of the earth, this polar pillar, is ultimately telling us, is that the magic has been siphoned by humans, and we're working on awakening the planet back up. But what's interesting is the Santa's Midnight Run one. Like, Santa went through this like personality crisis where he was all of his different manifestations, and the focus was so heavily on the north and the power of believing, and your focus on the north. And ultimately, Christmas is a pole star holiday, and there are cultists somewhere completely harnessing this entire ritual 100% because they know how powerful it is, and they want you to think that the North Pole is some magical, mystical thing where Santa's at, and it's not this like powerful, energetic vortex point. I mean, think about it. Like, when you go up there, it's like literally walking into heaven. We have the aurora borealis. There's like lights flowing all around you. It's like walking into an etheric realm. It is literally magic. And that is why all of the world governments are fighting over it. I go into that heavily in the PDF, which I guess we get into now. What time is it, you guys? I have no idea. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. All right, we're going to go through some of this. You guys, this is huge, okay? This is a huge PDF, I mean. Like, literally, you guys can scroll through this forever. I have tons of videos, tons of extra links. I went back into Discord where a lot of this research started, and I compiled it all together in here. Some of these things are, like, copied and pasted from Discord. I dive into tying all of these different things together. How the Holy Grail is the pole star, is the axis mundi, is the world tree, is all of these things. And I cite literally all my sources. You guys, I've been doing this for so long. We cannot go into this. I'm not going to hold you captive for this long. But if you are digging this, like, there's so much here. This is going to be my book. She's got the whole DVD on set. She says, Millie says, I have a theory that's an entrance to another universe, realm, alternate realities. Yes. So, okay, how did this start? Okay. By the way, these are all the sources that I used here. Me, myself, I, the ethers, and the cosmos, circa 1998 in this reality, but spanning eternity. Okay, so much of this research literally dates back to the summer solstice. When the pole star was being transited is when I started diving into all of this stuff. And you guys can go back to the Atlantis thread on Discord. There's a whole bunch. Sharon popped off on a whole bunch of really, really, really wise and insightful things. So did several other people, and we were in this rabbit hole for a minute. These are some really great videos that I recommend diving into. This is Robert Semper. I do not agree with his political views. I don't always agree with his esoteric interpretations. He's an anthropologist, but he does good research. I find value in his work. I do. Not a lot of people like him exist, so, you want to watch stuff on this. He's rad, and he has a lot of information. And this is a video about Thule, Hyperborea, and ancient Atlantis, which is ultimately how this started. This actually started with Thule, and me stumbling across that asteroid, and which was discovered and named in 2019, and then was supposed to be changed. Its name was supposed to be changed because Thule is actually the term that the Nazis, it's much older than Nazism, but it's the term that the Nazis used for like the northern land, Hyperborea, Ultima Thule, this northern Shambhala type mystical land that, ultimately I think Atlantis is even though that's considered in the middle of the Atlantic, is ultimately talking about. And I stumbled across this asteroid, and you guys can watch my whole breakdown in the Discord if you want. But supposedly they were supposed to change its name, and they did change it and named it after some Native American thing. Where is it? I don't know. Somewhere on here I have it. But they didn't change it. They really didn't change it, because every astrology software still calls it that. NASA still calls it that. Everybody calls it that, because they're all governed by freaking Nazis. But anyway, there's lots of information here. I dove all into the Arctic Air Force Base, which is named Thule Air Force Base, and it's in Greenland, and it's super gnarly seal, which is a picture of the globe as a grid and a 6-headed dragon on top of it with like the pole star above it. It looks super creepy, but all of our world governments are fighting over the poles right now. And in this PDF somewhere, I posed the idea, like, if you control the poles, do you control the consciousness of the planet? Is that why our world governments are so focused on the poles? But this is just a whole bunch of different links of things that got me to where I'm at here. These are all really good videos, okay? So this is inside that Arctic military base. This is about Mount Meru, which is another name for this Axis Mundi pole star mountain of initiation, this peak that we're all ultimately going towards, the center of the labyrinth, the center of the spiral, all of this. These are all archetypes that mean the same thing. This guy is a flat earther dude, but he is really obsessed with northern mythologies and polar research, and his videos, while obviously I don't agree with everything he has to say, he's got some good stuff. And I did a couple of breakdowns of his videos, like a bunch of notes that you can find on Discord too. This is from the Philosophical Research Society on Northern Mythology. I should have written the author's name, but this is a book, a lecture on a book called Beyond the North Wind, and it was super insightful. This is about ancient polar mythologies. This is a lady on Facebook who was talking about the Anima Mundi and the Axis Mundi, and she was tying together like literally a lot of the same things that I was, and I found it afterwards. This is the video where it talks about how the Odyssey is about the world axis and coming back home to that polar axis, that tree, that Axis Mundi, that world tree, that world soul, that center of everything. These are about Hamlet's Mill and the argument of how really all ancient myths are about the shifting of the stars, the precession, and really astrology, even the Bible. Everything is ultimately talking about the sky. And yeah, it was Thule who got me here. Also, I started thinking, so you know how it said like the prime meridian can be anywhere, and then we found out like, well, actually the prime meridian's in a really specific spot and it aligns with all of the crossing lines. Well, back when I was thinking the prime meridian could be anywhere, I was like, well, where's my prime meridian? What is on the other side of me? And so this is a map where you can put in your location and you can find out what is on the other side of the map as you. So look, let's say I live here. I know where I live. I live here in California, right? And so I want to find out what is exactly opposite me on the globe. For like visualization purposes, I feel like this could help me to like visualize my place here on this world soul. You know, I could like anchor in to the North Pole, the South Pole, these other two poles that we just discovered exist. And then I want to find where I'm at and what's on the other side of me. And so I did, and it's the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's like, I have a picture of it somewhere, but it's the middle of the Indian Ocean off the coast of Australia, Antarctica, and Africa. And you guys will probably be in a similar position or off a little bit, but this can be where you can find out if you care and you're a total nerd like me, which you might not be. I dove into on Discord how there is a crater in Greenland, which is literally right by that military base that we share with a lot of countries that we're actually not friends with, technically on the surface level. And it's arguably the crater from the meteor that possibly caused the Great Flood. So that's interesting. And that asteroid, Thule, is actually the farthest asteroid that we've ever studied. We've actually sent equipment out there to like physically study it in person, which is super interesting. And nobody changed its name. This is what they were supposed to call it. They renamed it to, however you pronounce this, which is a Algonquin, from the Algonquin language, but literally nobody listened. Like, you can find this written on the internet, but every single astrology software calls it Thule, and so does NASA, even though they said they changed it after they got called out for it being connected to the Nazis, just like NASA is. But yeah, nobody listened. So both Russia and America have huge military / space force presence in the North Pole. That Thule base is actually a Space Force base. And they have this super creepy logo, which I have posted in Discord. I might have the picture on here. We'll scroll down in a second. Names have powers, dude. People name stuff for a reason. That's why all production companies and cars and corporations are all named after constellations and mythic figures, because they are trying to harness that. So I said here, I bet the military at both poles not only use the magnetic poles in some shady fashion for, world domination of the entire human race, but these sites are also used to contact other intelligences from off-planet and or in Earth. This is stuff I was writing in Discord when I was in some rabbit hole. So the military base is really close to where that asteroid impact was that supposedly took out Atlantis, like super close. And this is where I went and show you the coordinates and how the coordinates are super, super close. And yeah, the ice is melting there, and I think it's showing secrets that people obviously want to get to and use and utilize. This is all notes from this dude's video. There's so much that really came through. It's pretty rad. I'm not going to read all of this. A lot of this is information from several different books, and how really all these archetypes I was zeroing in on are ultimately the same thing, and they were all kind of leading me to this axis, this gate of man, gate of the gods, the top of the mountain being the galactic center, the pole star being found in the valley below. It's actually the mirror below of this mountain of initiation. And throughout this PDF, I dive very deep into how other people are saying this as well. A lot of this is my own 2 cents mixed in with a lot of cited sources, which I'm not going to dive too deep into now, but I really recommend that you guys do, because I would love to just info dump all of this on you, but it's 11:11. I've been in this for a while, guys, but this is the symbolic quest for finding that mystic center. The Grail is even manifested at the center of the round table of the center, which in and of itself, which we've discussed here in length, because you guys know I'm obsessed with Arthurian legends. Any chance I can pull them in and use them, I will. But we've talked very heavily in the Ophiuchus video about how the 12 is the zodiac, those 12 knights, the 12 knights of the round table, and Arthur being that 13. And the Grail really appears in the middle. It is that center quest, but we often forget that they all failed. Depending on the mythology, Gawain got kind of close. Technically, Galahad found the Grail. Percival too, depending on which legends you want to read or how far back you want to go. But Arthur didn't. Arthur's dead or in stasis somewhere in Avalon. Like, dude failed his quest. Like, 100% failed his quest. Once and future king, come back, try again, but you didn't succeed the first time. So ultimately what we're looking back on with this legend is like lessons of what not to do. With the Grail quest, a lot of it revolves around the feminine. We have Guinevere and Morgan Le Fay, his wife that ran off with Lancelot because he was a dick, and Morgan Le Fay, his half-sister, baby mama, both conjunct near this moon. Guinevere on the sun, and Morgan Le Fay on Mercury, I believe. And so it's really showing that, like, the reason why the quests failed was that the feminine is not depicted accurately in Grail legends. The best we have is this esoteric depiction of the Grail itself. But other than that, you've got an evil witch and a home-wrecking Guinevere, whatever you want to label her as. So really it's that feminine, which also comes in at the 13. So this is the quest. It's the treasure hunt. It's the source of illumination, the spark. There's also a lot of, Grail legends about a time where the Grail was lost and fertility is gone and we're searching for the Grail. And it's interesting that there is a time where we didn't have a pole star actually leading up to the Christian age. There was a period of time where like one pole star had fallen out of favor and another one hadn't taken favor yet. And I almost wonder if like that's part of the legend. Literally, I dive into so many different cultures, connections to this mountain, particularly Mount Meru, and this like concept of the polar mountain and the peak. The Chinese are obsessed with the pole star. All of their ancient, like emperor temples or kingdoms, they're not castles. What are they? Where does the emperor live? In his empire? I don't know. Whatever it's called in the East, the really fancy, beautiful buildings with the little, obviously architecture is also not my thing. They all align with the pole star. Okay, the pole star is considered to be the seat of the emperor, the point of paradise, of the center, and in Chinese mythology, it is a focal point, like the focal point. I dive so deep into lots of different connections to the pole star throughout different mythologies here. I really do hope that you guys read this if you're into this kind of thing. So not all mystic orientations take the east and the sun as their focal point or reference. There is an alternate point in the geography of the sky, symbolic of this hole in space-time, the unmoved mover, the pole star. There's actually... Okay, so precession, the reason why precession happens, so the reason why... or so they say. We don't actually know. And this is another thing me and Mario were talking about. Well, he sent me DMs that I read and I haven't replied to yet because I got a lot to say. But we were talking about how everything NASA tells us is bullshit. And, we don't really know what space is really like. And shit, wouldn't surprise me if we are on a flat Earth. And he was talking about like a geocentric versus heliocentric and all of that jazz. And I also mentioned something to him about, precession. what precession is, the reason why those stars move 1 degree every 72 years is because Earth is spinning on its axis. It's moving from pole star to pole star to pole star, spinning on its axis. They claim that the reason why Earth does this is because of the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon in tandem. They like pull the Earth to go like this. I don't know if I believe that. One, all of the planets in our solar system are on different orbits. Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius, this is why Aquarius is so weird. One of the reasons why Aquarius is so weird. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus actually is on a sideways orbit. Like, it spins like this. Like, this, I don't see the sun being where it's much farther from Uranus, and then its couple of moons causing it to do that. It doesn't make sense. Every planet has a different pull of its orbit. I don't know. I don't believe that it's the sun and the moon doing it. I think it's the galactic center that sits opposite. I think it's the galactic center that's ultimately doing this. But really, we don't really know what's going on. In a lot of ancient cultures, some of them had polar deities. Him and I were actually talking about this, and I dive into it in this PDF in a plethora of different places. But how, we talk about these lunar cults, right? And these solar cults. Well, if you go back far enough, it's a polar cult. It's this connection to this pole star. I'm going to read Joseph Campbell's quote here. I fucking love that man. I'm a really big Joseph Campbell man. But anyway, Joseph Campbell writes, pole star as the summit of the axis mundi. In many cases, the center is conceived as an axis mundi, extending vertically to the pole star and downward to some pivotal point in the abyss. Honestly, I think that's the black hole of the galactic center. In here, a lot of people talk about how the tree is actually upside down, and so it could be flipped, but to some pivotal point in the abyss. Iconographically. Really, Allie? Whatever. It may be presented as a mountain, a stairway, or a ladder, a pole, or very commonly a tree, which we see a lot, especially in northern mythologies. Literally, you guys, there's so much. Okay, so this is where I start to talk about Plato and how I'm pretty sure Atlantis is talking about the axis mundi, and that polar pillar in the middle is the pineal gland, and how it's simultaneously talking about us and our consciousness, finding this center point in between, and also how we can find it in the stars. And it's definitely moved me away from the center of the Atlantic Ocean and more into myself, which is ultimately what I was supposed to be doing. These are some pictures I took out of some books. Like here, this is Plato's Atlantis. So you can see, I wrote here, this is something from Discord. If this was Plato's jam, why wouldn't he encode his story of Atlantis with this esoteric knowledge? I took this image from the back of my copy of Plato's Timaeus and Critias. It looks very similar to many of these alchemical depictions of the axis/anima mundi. And what's interesting is these two books are put together for Plato. The Timaeus is all about like the demiurge making this whole reality that we live in. It's about cosmology. It's about the birth of the cosmos and the birth of this like anima mundi, this like cosmic soul, right? And then Timaeus, because it's a dialogue between like two dudes and Socrates. And he kind of like gives way to Critias, who then goes in right after we've laid out the entire like how the cosmos works and was born by the demiurge, or birthed or created by the demiurge from chaos. And then it goes into talking about Atlantis. It's not just like, here's one book and then the other book. Like, Timaeus is literally like, yo, Critias, now it's your time to talk. And then Critias is like, okay, I got some shit to say. And then he starts talking about Atlantis. And so it's like, why are we talking about all this esoteric, cosmic, woo-woo shit, and then all of this super literal exoteric ancient civilization that lived in the Atlantic Ocean, or the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Like, it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense if it is esoteric in nature. And so while I do believe there was a worldwide civilization that existed pre-Ice Age, and that there was a worldwide cataclysm that destroyed this worldwide traveling civilization, I think Plato's Atlantis is ultimately talking about this same polar myth. Just like the Odyssey and freaking Sword in the Stone and all of these freaking Hercules, all of these things are all ultimately talking about this rabbit hole of rabbit holes. This is literally the rabbit hole of rabbit holes. Okay, you guys can read that later. If you control the bulls, like say by military presence and or technology, like, I don't know, HARP or whatever else they got going on up there, might you also control to a certain extent the axis of the world's soul? I'm just trying to read and see if I want to. So, we talk a lot in esoteric traditions, I guess, about like the four directions, the four elements, north, south, east, and west meeting together, you know what I mean? But we also have this sort of like zenith, this top of the mountain, this fifth point, this ether point, this cosmic center that unites all of those four opposing forces. And then we have this polar thing in between, right? The zenith, that's really working to pull all of these together. I also get into like a lot of technicalities, like years and dates and degrees, and how Polaris is actually 1 degree and 14 minutes away from exact alignment with the pole, and it will continue to gradually become exact until 2095, which is interesting considering just a couple of years. Okay, so Polaris will become exactly conjunct with the celestial pole in 2095, and then it will enter Cancer in 2102, like only a couple of years later. That's pretty interesting. 2095. Sorry guys, I just noticed that. I need to know that. Okay. And then it will recede and it will give way to the constellation of the King. This is actually Andromeda's dad. So as we know from the mythology, like, dude was a dick. He chained his daughter to a rock and sacrificed her to the sea serpent because his wife had a big mouth. So the last time he was a king, very similar to, I don't know, King Arthur, perhaps, he failed. Like, he failed miserably. All of the earth magic was sucked into Excalibur in order to control and dominate, and ultimately that sword is also representative of the mind, of the masculine analytical mind that Gemini is also representative of. So while, the patriarchy took over, our mental faculties were able to develop. And now we're working on integrating back in the wisdom of the feminine. So hopefully the second time around, this king is, not a dick. But, kings will be kings. So we'll see what happens. But that is going to happen, but it will be for a while. It will be like literally thousands of years. So I guess from 2095 until the year 7500, we'll be slowly moving away from Polaris and towards the king. So it does give the king a little bit of time to figure out, what he's going to do with himself. star is strongly connected to the Chariot. And Mario over at Symbolic Studies, he has a whole video where he did on the Chariot card. And, or is it your Cancer video? Type it in the chat. Is there a way for you to link your YouTube right here in the chat? Like, here's my thing, come and follow me. If there is, do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to go over all of this, but I just go so far into how everybody everywhere was super focused on it, and it was super important, and it was the birthplace of all the gods, and it's connected to Mount Olympus and Mount Meru and the birth of freaking Thor and Zeus, and literally everybody important in mythology is connected to this point. This is ultimately what they're talking about. It's the seat of the gods. Now, it's interesting because you see how wonderful this sounds over in the East. You know, the Hindus, the seat of the gods, the Chinese, this is the seat of the emperor, this is the center, this is paradise, this is primordial awesomeness, the unmover, blah, blah, blah. And then when you get to like Western fixed star astrology, I was laughing so hard. Where is this? I have to show this to you. Okay. A double yellow star, topaz yellow and pale white, marking the celestial pole. The nature of Saturn and Venus, it causes much sickness, trouble, and loss of fortune, disgrace and great affliction, and may give legacies, inheritances intended by much evil. With the sun, it will cause many troubles and evils, and the moon, hatred of the vulgar, ill will of women, and dangers of thieves. But I wrote, I'm high on edibles. And I'm laughing so hard right now. Traditional Western astrology is like crap, dude. I was laughing so hard. Like, I'm writing all these notes about how this is heaven on earth and our celestial pole of the gods and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, this will cause evil. Anyway. Where is this point in your chart? You may have planets here, you may not have planets here, but this point is somewhere. Look and see. Where is 28 degrees of Gemini in your chart? This is where you have some sort of still point. This is where you have a guide, an indicator. This is where you can lead. This is where you can help follow your instincts and be a leader, be a guide for others. Mine falls in my 10th house. I literally have to do this. I can't not do what I'm doing. It's conjunct my Chiron. I have to lead in the area of the wounded healer, even though I'm like still bleeding from this freaking arrow wound of the Hydra, like Chiron. And I'm like, yo, bro, I'm not okay. I'm still working on myself. I still, for some reason, have to get out there. This wound, this Chironic wound is in Gemini, which governs the mind, and it really does span all the way back to my childhood and being convinced that like I was not smart, like I should not be teaching or learning. I can't spell, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that. Like, my brain is not my forte. Like, do not lean into that. Go paint or sew or do something like that. You're good at that. Like, don't be trying to do brain things. Well, joke's on them. Ha ha ha. Joke's on them. I'd like to see them pull some of this shit out of their ass. But that's my wound. That's this like mental wound that I'm not good enough, that I don't know enough. But, you know, then I have to get out of my head and realize like I actually know a lot of things. And I might not know enough, but other people don't know jack shit. And they're out there talking and causing a whole bunch of commotion with all of their bullshit. And so somebody needs to get out there and be like, guys, let's ask some questions. And Gemini is the question asker. So it's almost like, really, how can we not lean in? This is like me working with this energy. How can I lean into being the questionnaire? Like, how can I learn how to ask the right questions, and so I don't beat myself up for not having all the answers? We don't have the answers because we haven't asked the right questions. But that's like me working with my own shit. But anyway, where does this fall for you? What planets are there? how are you supposed to be the still point for others, right? You guys, I go so deep into how the pole star is connected to the world axis and the world tree and the middle pillar and the middle path. And I tie it to Plato and literally so much. Also, I tie it into, I don't know where it is on here. Is it right here? This cross? St. Andrew's cross. Okay. So the predominant meaning of the cross is that of conjunction. Plato in the Timaeus tells about how the demiurge joins up the broken parts of the world soul by two sutures shaped like St. Andrew's cross. Okay, so I didn't know what St. Andrew's cross looked like, and I had to look it up, but it turns out that it looks exactly like this. That yellow cross, that it's like an X. By the way, if you Google St. Andrew's cross, you are going to get a bunch of pictures of like BDSM or whatever it's called, where you tie people up. Because apparently that cross is used a lot in that. I was like, whoa, okay, wasn't expecting that. So anyway, it was very interesting to find that that cross that I didn't know why I put there is tied to this, the world soul being joined back together by this cross. And it's that cross of consciousness, right? And it's very connected to fire. We were talking about how that is the light of fire of consciousness. So I thought that was cool. I found that after I made that depiction. And this is about how the Odyssey is connected to the myth and all of these like pole star, promised land, holy land, paradise, mountain of whatever, enlightenment. It's all ultimately talking about this. And what is this? Oh yeah, I had to connect Dumbledore to it too. What is this? Okay, so this guy adds that the Latin word albus, which means white, which is also Dumbledore's first name because he's the white wizard, corresponds to this Hebrew word, which signifies the moon and points to the Albia or Albion, which is another name for like Great Britain, but specifically tied to like the Arthurian times, like after the fall of Rome. But it's connected to this concept of the mountain. And so I had to put that in there just because it's like Dumbledore. But that there is this like South Pole. So at the South Pole is actually a void. There is no southern star. People say that there is, the Southern Cross. And there is a Southern Cross, but it's not close enough to actually be the pole star. It's close enough for you to be able to find the pole and be like, oh, there's a Southern Cross, so that must be the polar area. But really in the south, the pole star is a void space. It's an empty space. And so that's very indicative of, having to go into the depths and merge with all of this. Okay, so I don't know how much other of these things. Okay, yeah. It's important to note that this cosmic tree symbol often appears upside down with its roots in the heaven and its foliage on earth. I think that's significant because when I was trying to make that depiction that I showed there for you guys, I was struggling with it. And I was struggling to how I wanted to put it. The way it lays on the astrology wheel is Capricorn is at the top, and that is where the galactic center is, which would be opening gate of the gods, right? And the pole star is actually at the bottom in Cancer. And so that's how I was putting it. And in all of these other alchemical depictions, the anima mundi, the pole star, is at the top. But I really see it more as being found in the abyss. And when you find that, it unlocks what's up there. you have to go. I've said this before about how most spiritual mountains are actually volcanoes. So a lot of I'm gonna put a post. I have a post on this already written in my notes section. I just have to find it. About how, the mountain that's most important to me is Mount Shasta because it's close by here, but there's lots of mountains to choose from that are renowned as spiritual retreats and spiritual in nature, and most of them are volcanoes. They are not mountains. And that really speaks to how the real fire, the real truth, the fire of life is found in the depths. It's found in the depths. And so that's where I think the pole star is found, in the depths of the labyrinth. And then it really opens up this gate to perhaps maybe like some sort of like ladder of initiation that we then climb to this galactic center. Remember, the pole star is going to enter into that cardinal sign of Cancer before like about a little over 100 years before the galactic center one opens. So it really is our first path. It is making right with the gate of man before we can ever enter the gate of the gods. And I think that esoteric astrology in general, everything in general, gets us to focus on where we're going next and not where we're at. And so we really do need to lean more into there's so much going on in Mount Shasta. Oh my gosh, yes, that was a big key in my awakening, was Mount Shasta. The gate of man. What's down there? Gemini, Cancer, duality, the subconscious mind, our trauma, our intuition, really making right with that psychic lunar body, our mercurial mind, the alchemist, all of that, before we can ever unlock what's up there or really travel the right mountain of initiation. We really have to make right down the bottom. So Blavatsky says that in the beginning, its roots were generated in heaven, and it grew out of the rootless root of all being, that primordial essence we've been touching on over here. Its trunk grew and developed, crossing the plains of Panorama. This is like different auras of the cosmic soul. It shot out crossways in luxuriant branches, first on the plane of heartily differentiated matter, and then downward until it touched the terrestrial plane. Thus, it is said to grow with its roots above and its branches below. This concept of the axis mundi, the world tree, it is the united force that unites earth with the underworld and the heaven. It unites the three planes of existence, or many, many more, depending on how esoteric you want to get, but there's many planes of existence, and this is ultimately the axis that unites them all. And what's interesting is I went back to the videos, the Capricorn video that I did right before the Cancer video where I dove into the pole star. And I was talking about the mountain of initiation and the unicorn and the tree. But I hadn't dove into the axis mundi yet in this world tree. I knew about the world tree, but I hadn't tied it to the pole star or this axis that I was on. And that whole video was all about this tree. This tree that roots went into the water. And if you remember in the last video I did, when we talked about the fates are said to water this world tree, particularly in like northern traditions, in more like Scandinavian mythology. The fates are said to water the world tree, which I find very interesting. It's like each one of our videos are melding into the other. Okay, you guys, there's so much here. Like literally, there's so much. You guys will go through this. These are a bunch of different depictions of the the Axis Mundi. Oh, and look at, they talk a lot about the cardinal points. The Egyptians really focus on this cardinal axis. Like, I didn't just pull this cardinal axis out of nowhere. It's aligned with the solstices. It's aligned with the equinoxes. In the mythology, there's said to be 4 mountains there that all have these rivers that merge together in the center. It is what all the ancients are talking about. It's what astrology was before it branched off into what it is today. This is merging back with the whole. Okay, so these are some of these like depictions of it. The labyrinth coming up to this world soul, but it's connecting it all, as you can see, by all the other planetary forces, and the split of duality, the sun and the moon. That's Gemini right there, right? This is that same depiction of the Anima Mundi that we've gone over before. This is like kind of like the consciousness that the world axis is said to govern, you know, be the polarity of. Also, it should be noted that like our axis is on a tilt, and it's believed that that is why duality exists, and that it used to be straight, and when it was straight, we were balanced and like ascended or whatever. But I think seasons are necessary. Like, where would we live if, like, I don't know. The whole straight axis thing is weird to me, because there'd be, I don't know how it would work for seasons and growing and for fertility and things like that. I don't know. Well, I don't know how it works. These are all different alchemical depictions of this Anima Mundi and then the Axis Mundi. And as you can see, like, Sophia is very representative of that world soul that the Axis Mundi kind of is like the mechanism of. Okay, I think we're done. Are we done? Yeah, you guys go ahead and dive into this. There's so much, you guys. Like I said, this is going to be a whole book. But hopefully you find a lot of good things in here. There's some really good videos here. Like, really good videos that I highly recommend watching. And this one is so good. His voice is very soothing, though. He's a little dull. He needs some more oomph. Keep me focused and not falling asleep, but he's really good. Also, these guys, like, there's some far out stuff, but it's good. Especially Mara, if you haven't seen these, you'd like these. And definitely watch this lecture, because it really ties together everything that I said in my last video. We were on this quest, you guys, and we didn't even know it. Like, we were on the quest, we were on this odyssey, and we didn't even know it until we could see it. And, you know, I'm going to watch this back later and think, like, there were so many other things I wanted to say. And to be fair, I have tons of notes in here and tons of notes on my phone and so many notes on here, and we could be here forever, but it is 11:45. So feel free diving in on your own. This is ultimately a personal quest anyway. Look and see, where does the galactic center fall in your chart? Where is 27 degrees of Sagittarius? Where is 28 degrees of Gemini? That is where this axis, this gate of man, gate of the gods, that's ticking its way open over this incarnation, and honestly probably our next one, as much as many of us want to believe that we aren't going to have to come back here. I don't think we're fully done. I think we'll be back, you guys. But I think that ultimately we're working our way out. Okay, I'm going to lay one last thing on you guys. So this is my latest theory. Okay, you guys know how in the New Age realm we hear a lot of talk about the Age of Aquarius, the Age of Aquarius, the Age of Aquarius. We are moving into the Age of Aquarius, and it is going to be amazing, and it is going to be so wonderful, and brotherhood and humanity and all that jazz, and yay. You guys have heard me talk about how, okay, well, the Age of Aquarius is also the age of transhumanism. Let's not forget that, because Aquarius rules advanced technology and robots. And so I've always stressed on the fact that Aquarius is a split. It's got two waves, and there's two streams that we will be taking once we hit this age of Aquarius. Well, it hit me the other day in the shower, where all my best brilliances do. What if, hear me out, okay? What if it isn't about the age of Aquarius? Okay, look. God, I wish I had my little chart thing. I need to bring that in here. The ages move backwards, all right? We're in the age of Pisces right now. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. Before the age of Pisces, we were in the age of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. We went from the first to the last. We're currently in the process of merging with the whole, with the cosmic womb. After Pisces is the age of Aquarius. After that is the age of Capricorn. The age of Capricorn. It's like literally the age of the elites, of the kings, of the system, of the Saturnian system. Like, we're moving backwards. The ages move backwards, right? So, what if it's not about the start of the age of Aquarius? It's really about the end of the age of Pisces and the merging with the all that is and the cosmic womb and turning on our like Jesus wizardly mystic abilities, and then moving on to whatever's next, and not so much staying for the inorganic technological manifestation of what is going to unfold for the age of Aquarius that we will not be able to stop. But what if it's not supposed to happen? I'm just kidding. I think it is. But I think that we are missing the point here. I think they have us so focused on what is coming that we're missing where we're at. And I think that this ending of the age of Pisces is even more important than the start of the age of Aquarius, and really making right with this Piscean energy. We have Neptune home there right now. We have Jupiter entering it. Feel into this. This is, like I said, Pisces is the cosmic womb. It's the whole. It's the all. It is a total illusion and a complete confusion. And it's like batshit crazy fantasy land. But it is the Akash. It is the merging with the cosmic waters of all that is. And I think we have a lot to gain from this tail end of the age of Pisces, well before the age of Aquarius is anything to bestow on us. And depending on how much we evolve through the Piscean age will depend which one of those streams we go down when it comes to the age of Aquarius, because, you know, there's multiple. And then there's that lovely middle ground in between. You guys know we have to be the serpent, swimming between the two extremes. Yes, Mario, I can't wait to dive into that PDF. Awesome work. Thank you so much. Yeah, the PDFs are going to be a thing now. Like I said, I have to start getting more organized. I had no idea how much actual research I had already done 6 months ago that was just lost to the times of Discord. And I had to scroll back and found it. Sharon actually told me you can search in Discord for certain words up at the top and you can find things. And the Atlantis thread is full of all of this kind of stuff. But I need to start compiling it. And so I only seem to be motivated to do things in cycles with the stars. So it's going to be tied to the moon videos. And then eventually I'll have all these PDFs and information and I'll be able to compile it into a book. I'm actually in the process of making my first book, which is going to be a bibliomancy book. So it's like, I do a lot of divination with books. I actually use books a lot more than I use tarot cards, where I'll just like randomly pick a book up off the shelf and like open it to a certain page. It's called bibliomancy. It's divining with books. And I'm going to make a bibliomancy divination book with like all my old posts. So all my old writings and all my old posts, to try to figure out how to publish before I make this book. So I have a lot of things in the works. But yeah, definitely need to get more organized. And the PDFs are helping me a lot, because then I can see it all together and I can get it out of my mind, which is a dangerous place. So anyway, thank you so much, you guys. I know I laid so much on you. It's a Gemini full moon, partner to an eclipse. you don't really have to do much. Like, it's something is culminating and it's fated and it's destined. Like this just culminated here, and it was fated and it was destined, and it took over my life the past 18 months. And now I'm going to go watch episode 5 of The Librarians. It's a really corny show, you guys, but it's pretty cool. And it has a lot of like ancient relics and arts, and you can tell it was written by a cultist. You can tell they were probably a Freemason. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I like it. All right. I adore you guys. When do we meet again? I don't even know. What's happening here? Oh, that's right. You guys, we have Cosmic Kids. Okay. Today's the 18th. No, today is the 16th. The moon is on the 18th. That's right. Okay, so I think we're going to do it on the 20th because there's a lot happening on the 19th. Chiron is stationing direct. Venus is stationing retrograde. It's like a lot. Mercury trines Uranus on the 20th. Yeah, okay, on the 20th. So on the 20th, okay, I'm going to talk to you guys in Discord, those of you who do Cosmic Kids, and we are going to make gingerbread witches cabins. And you just get whatever supplies you want to make whatever you want. My kids want to do it with graham crackers and like piece all this stuff together. Like, my youngest is supposed to be doing it this year in school for 5th grade. They make like giant gingerbread houses, but you know, we homeschool now. They're not going back to school. And so we told her that we would get her all the stuff and she's going to make all the stuff. So we're going to make gingerbread cabins on the 20th for Cosmic Kids, or the 19th. Whatever is better for you. Janelle, Sharon, I know a couple of you also are coming, some newer members who have kids. We would love to have you. If you do not have children, but you want to make a gingerbread house, you are welcome to come and let your inner child out. Gingerbread men too, which, fun fact, I posted this on Discord. Gingerbread men, the tradition of the gingerbread man spans back to Saturnalia in Rome, where they would make little biscuits of humans and eat them like Saturn eating his kids. And the Queen Elizabeth used to have all different cookies made of like dignitaries and like diplomats, and she would like eat them in front of them. Like, she would have cookies made of like people coming to visit her from other countries and shit, and she'd be like it's so weird. It's so weird. But yeah, also I realized that leaving Santa cookies is another way of feeding Saturn. Like, we're feeding Saturn, Santa, Saturn, Satan. It's all the same shit. We're going to dive into this for Capricorn. We're feeding him our children. I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, Christmas joy is being harnessed somewhere. I also realized that so Christmas falls in Capricorn season, which falls on the axis of the mother and the father, right? Capricorn governs the mother, Capricorn governs the father, and Cancer governs the mother. But yet we're convinced to like our kids to like freaking worship some random dude in the North Pole, and like all the best presents are from him, and we're like buying clothes or whatnot, you know, and all of the Christmas joy and the Christmas spirit is being put on Santa, which is Satan. Well, I mean, it is, but it's Saturn, which is where Satan came from, ultimately, kind of ish. It's a mesh of archetypes, but he's part of it. And yeah, anyway, I don't know. It's so crazy once you start to see all this stuff and you're just like, yeah, I guess I'll just take part in this Saturn ritual so that my kids don't hate me. That's fun. Anyway, yeah, he's a psychopath. So have fun with your cannibal rituals of eating your children. Oh, Santa is a psychopath, yeah. It was pretty cool that episode of The Librarians because he was like having like a personality crisis and like bouncing back and forth to like all of his different depictions of like Thor and like Saint Nick and like the Krampus, and it's really was interesting to watch him jump back and forth, and they just kept referring to like this Santa as being like his current my dog says it's time to go. His current like incarnation, you know, it's really morphed a lot to where everybody's like, oh yeah, we'll worship this guy. This guy's way less bad than the dude eating all of his kids and the orgies and the crazy stuff that happens in Rome. Oh my God, Saturnalia is off the chain, you guys. Okay, Squirt, I'm ready. We're gonna